like to congratulate you for organizing this series of lecture. We are a democratic country, and many are perceiving that this is a move towards democracy in what generally the Western world says, Middle East. But this is India's near West. We cannot take United States of the Western world's categorization. What what do we mean when we use this phrase, whether it is Middle East or near West? It means some countries which fall in the region called West Asia and North Africa. So these are the countries which are facing, as many as you have also pointed out, revolution. But many have got problem about using the phrase revolution. Generally, the accepted terminology is movement, or some say it is political crisis. This is what is happening in that region, whether we call it Middle East or we call it near west for India. So what is really happening and what has really happened in this region? So first I would like to help you recapture what had really happened in the region over the months. First, in Tunisia, the long-term ruler of that country was changed. His name was Zaine al Abidin Ben Ali. He was replaced by Muhammad Ghanouchi. Even he was changed. He could not stay for long. People clamored for democracy. And after that, we saw changes in Egypt, Libya, which is about to change, which is still undergoing the crisis, Bahrain, which also faced tumultuous movements, Yemen, Algeria, Jordan, Oman, and most importantly, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is also expecting to have some changes there. So, what are the trends of the political turmoil in the region? The one trend which has emerged out is that all are democratically elected leaders who ruled over their countries for years, some for 3 decades. And this is what is happening. They deposed monarchies in their countries, and it happens from 1950s to 1970s. And this continued, and basically they were democratically elected regimes, and many draw parallel to Hitler's regime, that Hitler was also elected democratically, but later he turned authoritarian, a dictator. So this is the trend which is generally coming up. Third is all these rulers which are undergoing crisis provided a stability to their respective countries over the years. Religiously, all are Muslims. That is why some are calling it revolution in the Muslim world. Especially Thomas Friedman has called it revolution in the Muslim world. But there are differences which are persisting in the region. Bahrain is a Muslim country, but it is a Shia which staged coup there. And they are basically standing up against a Sunni monarchy. So within Muslim world also there are changes. The conflict between Shia and Sunni is also surfacing in the region. Again, the most important facet or the issue which has emerged is the role of social networking and new media. The current revolution, or you can say turmoil or crisis, was initiated by Facebook. Facebook in Tunisia. And after that, all the governments in the regions which are facing these tumultuous moves made very sincere efforts to curb the operation of all these social networking groups like Facebook, Twitters, so that the problem or the political turmoil doesn't spread. So this is another phenomenon of this political movement in the region. So again, I would like to discuss what are the characteristics of the regimes. Over the years, they turned authoritarian sides, as I talked about, but all had got socialist leanings initially. They did not just came to rule over the people. They wanted to serve the people, but ultimately they did not do that. They started nominating their children as their political nominees, and but still people were ready to accept their regimes, as long as they would have delivered economically. But problem is economically they are not delivering anything, and the entire problem is coming because of the economic mismanagement. Liberty was denied to individual for years, and the problem of liberty could not become an issue. The the issue of the lack of governance, lack of delivery of public goods actually causing the turmoil in the region. And again, I would also like to point out this crisis is basically coming against individual rulers, not against the system. Still, monarchies are intact, although there are problems of protests are coming, demonstrations are coming, and the entire turmoil has been caused by demonstrations. And this is yet another characteristic of the political turmoil of the region. Still, no real regime change appears coming. Transitional governments are coming, like in Egypt and elsewhere, and we can say it is a palace coup. It was not a well defined revolution with an organization, clear cut ideology, alternative program, or policy package. Nothing has come. Even unfortunately, there is no clear cut leadership also. This is mass movement. This is a sporadic, a spontaneous anger against the established rulers, which is being witnessed in the region. Transitional governments are coming, but no one is sure. I will discuss about it later. Is there any clear-cut ideological triumph we can see? No, as I told. Many are trying to draw parallel of 1948, 1968, or even 1989. In 1948, in Europe, liberal democracies were established, and there was move for the establishment of liberal democracies in that region. But there is no ideological movement in this current crisis. Second is like in 1968, against authoritarian Soviet regime, you can say, or the socialist bloc, several East European countries raised in revolt. The Prague Spring we could witness at that time. But this time there is no Prague Spring. Although there are several revolution, there is several nomenclature is being used for describing all this political turmoil. But there is nothing clear cut at this time. This is, as I told you, this is basically a revolt against an individual person, whether it is in Egypt, or whether it is in Libya, or whether it is in Tunisia. If it is against Hosni Mubarak in Egypt, it is against Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. So this problem is being witnessed there. Again, like in 1989, the regime got changed. Socialist bloc, or you can say even Soviet Union, later in 1991, collapsed. But we don't see collapse of any country regime in this political turmoil. So this is very distinct, very different kind of turmoil, you can say, or crisis, or as some would like to describe, revolution, which has got no ideology. Then is it a democratic revolution, as we all would like to believe it? I mean, loosely it is being described in newspapers. But in fact, loosely we may call it democracy. But it is basically an anger. This is an anger, as I told you, against non-delivery. There is no political political touch to it, distinct political touch to it. This is the problem of this spontaneous movement. There is another fear about this movement. Will jihadist or Muslim Brotherhood take over? Because just discussed, there is no clear-cut ideology, there is no clear-cut organization, there is no clear-cut leadership. So any organization which is which has got an ideology and which is better organized than any sporadic or you can say small organization may take over, and this danger is being discussed all over. Will Islamic Brotherhood or Muslim Brotherhood or jihadist, because they are better organized in this region, may take over from all the angry crowd and established Muslim leadership in this region? By chance, all the places, all the countries which are undergoing this political turmoil had very secular, modernist kind of governments at place. Although they did not deliver, they turned authoritarian, but they did not have or still do not have, because there is no regime change as such in other countries. Did any Islamic or theological outlook. So this danger is being seen, and I think because of this danger, Israel or United States both are quite hesitant to take future action. On the one hand, they are saying that we have to support people's aspirations, people's movement, but they don't know how to support it. Who to support to? Because in Egypt, we all talked about Tahrir Square. We all witnessed thousands of people gathering, 1 million, which was expected to gather. But there was Al-Bardai. Even Al-Bardai did not have any clear-cut organization. Other organizations, smaller liberal organizations, were not very effective. So this is the dilemma which is persisting among the democratic world, among the modern world, or you can say the open societies. So this has to be resolved. Now I come to what will be the political future of this area, and then I will discuss about energy crisis or energy security. Future is quite uncertain. Why? Because I told you nothing is coming out. So all are waiting for another phase of turmoil or another phase of revolution to take place. All are hoping that all this demonstration, protests, or what we call in India julus, get organized. This demonstration or processions get a clear-cut ideology, a clear-cut program, a clear-cut policy alternatives. So this is what is being organized. Can there be a pan-regional coordination committee for democracy in the region? This is not being foreseen. Although crises are being witnessed in a number of countries, yet these countries do not have a unified kind of vision to coordinate their activities. Then comes the issue, will in the future, all the individual countries, I would like to say, if not there is a regional coordination, will these individual countries have something like an alternative organization which can provide or which can really channelize aspirations of the masses? And this is basically being speculated that eventually each country which is facing a problem may have an organization which may channelize resources, energy and anger of the people and have deliverable programs for the economic development. And this is one very interesting development. People are clamoring for economic development and they are ready to ignore even political rights. And there's this very unique phenomenon which the world will have to confront in the future if no clear-cut regime change takes place in the near future. So this is one factor which we have to, again, support of arming. or military is becoming very vital. Police, even if police sides you, it will not help you to establish the regime. If military sides with the demonstrators, change has occurred, as it was witnessed in Egypt. The moment the Egyptian army threw its lot behind the people who are ready to take over. Although again I believe that it was a palace coup. It was no alternative establishment of regime because protesters did not have their leaders. So finally they had to compromise something happening, and we are expecting, hoping that something would come out, as I have been repeating time and again. But Libya, changes in Libya and Saudi Arabia may be trendsetters. If Libya undergoes changes, or Saudi Arabia, its monarchy is changed, we can see another phase of very different kind of turmoil in the country, in the region. So what may happen for the energy? This is our, I think, the focus, the real question. And here I would like to point out that Middle East, or for us near West, is quite relevant for energy security. Its significance lies in the fact that it supplies about 36% of the world's total oils, and this is quite important. And it delivers about 29 million barrels of oil per day, and this is quite relevant for understanding what may happen if turmoil persists in the near future. The first question arises: what is its near or immediate impact? The general understanding is there will be no immediate impact. The real impact may start coming from April, when price rise may start affecting the stockpile or the agreements. So what is really happening now? Very simple. Price of crude oil is rising for different countries. For United States, it crossed $100 per barrel, and for Europe, for United Kingdom, it was about $117 per barrel. So that is actually causing problem, because $100 was a sensitive point. But people may say that still it has not reached the sensitivity of 2008, which was more serious in nature. There are viewpoints about that, which I would come later. So then what may happen about the long term? If the turmoil, the problem persists, yes, of course, it may have long-term impact. The first, when this turmoil started, and from Tunisia to Egypt, when it reached there, people were slightly complacent and say they were not worried. Although it was discussed, because the fear of Suez Canal getting blocked. But what happened? Nothing happened to Suez Canal transportation. Suez Canal was not obstructed by the protesters, even if they turned into thousands, or the numbers swelled to million. But it did not disturb it. So in fact, Egyptian problem did not disrupt the oil supply, you can say the energy security of the region. The problem started when Libya, the problem began in Libya, or turmoil started in Libya. Because Libya supplies 2%, almost 2%, about 1.7, 1.8, it depends. Different estimates give different numbers. So, but generally it is accepted that about 2% of world oil supply comes from Libya. And there are again different estimates per day production, about per day production. Some say that is 500,000 barrel per day. Some say it is 50,000 to $1 million per day. And International Energy Association estimate is about 850,000 barrel to 1 million barrel per day. Some Wall Street Journal has its own estimates. It got its own study. It says 1.6 million barrel per day. It's more than 10 lakh barrel per day is being produced by Libya. So it is expected that the moment it is disturbed, it will affect energy supply of the world. And in long term, I mean, not in the short term, but in the long term. But there are other views also that it can be some kind offset by, or you can say checked by, the supply of other countries. Saudi Arabia has already announced that it would help the world in stabilizing oil price, oil supply, and it is expected that, and reports are coming also for this regard, that Saudi Arabia has started or is increased its oil production by 500,000 barrel per day. So it may stabilize. Many still are quite skeptical of Saudi Arabia's intention, why it has announced. And this announcement, even at that time, somewhat stabilized the oil price, because several reports, studies, and speculations were indicating that it may cross $200 per barrel, or some had said even $250. This was the speculation, but it started around 100 to $103 per barrel. So it means even that announcement helped. Second, even Libya responded quite positively to the Venezuelan president's initiative, that is multinational initiative of the Venezuelan president, and he had made this announcement, or you can say appeal, to the Arab world and to Libya, and that also kind of stabilized the situation now. So for the time being, we are not seeing any serious problem. But as I told you, the problem continues in all the countries in the region. Problem may come. Why problem will come? Because all the international companies start evacuating their people, their workers. And this is one reaction which is quite unfortunate. I mean, we are doing that. The moment some crisis take place, we start evacuating our people. And no one wants to take any risk. So this is one factor which may, if problem persists, then it may have international oil companies which are active throughout the region, withdrawing their people. Second is disruption. Sometimes even local workers do not go to the oil fields. Like in Libya. In Libya, we all know this, all the oil fields of Libya are in the eastern part, and they have got their port through which they transact or they transport oil to different parts of the world, are in the eastern part. So a section of rebels, you can say, of people started disturbing or disrupting oil fields in the eastern part. Today's some news reports have cited that Libyan government used force also against some of these rebels who were trying to disrupt the supply, or they were trying to disrupt or disturb the oil field. So this is one aspect of that. Third aspect could be that the moment all companies, even government companies, feel that they should not take unnecessary risk, and they may slow down the production, and they may deliberately just either slow down or close their oil fields. This is one issue which is just now being witnessed in Libya, not in other countries, but in Libya. So this phenomenon, fear is this phenomenon may spread to other countries. So this is another issue which we have to look into when we discuss about energy security in the region. So we, in the near future, are we going to see that Libyan crisis would affect international energy security issue? The trend or the indication which is coming doesn't say so. Why? Because a strong section of rebels also realizes that if they disturb the oil supply or oil field, tomorrow when they take over, there will be no credibility left for the country. So the real source of income for the country should not be disturbed, because even they think that tomorrow they may become the real rulers. And with this point of view, they are basically they have started this political movement to take over the reign of the country. So this positive feature is also coming up. The third issue could be why there is problem. So banks do not care. They stop issuing letters of credit, and this problem is coming up now. So what may happen? One is like resource diversification. Not only Saudi Arabia and other countries from the region, but supply may also come from Mexico and Canada. And this is what we are expecting to happen. Canada has got important oil fields, and it is already supplying about 1.141 million barrels per day to United States. So this could be one important supplier. Second solution could come from the strategic reserve. Several countries have got a strategic reserve. Even a country like South Korea has got reserve for 2 months. United States has got its own reserve. And several other countries, United States, has got its own indigenous oil fields. And there is a strong pressure and debate in the United States to increase indigenous oil production, to stabilize, to intervene in the volatile market. So that is also one major factor which we are going to see. And the most important factor and most important development which may happen to intervene in the long term, I am talking everything in the long term, which has got potential, and that is energy mix. And there will be beginning of and we may also witness a post-petroleum age in the world if problem persists in the region and the alternative suppliers like Mexico and Canada somehow do not supply to the requirements of the world. And what is this energy mix? One is conventional energy, and second is what everybody is talking about, nuclear renaissance. We may soon witness nuclear renaissance in the world. Even West Asia, or you can say Middle East or India's near West, all are undergoing this witnessing nuclear renaissance. And all these countries are oil-rich countries. Despite that, they are going for nuclear energy. For them, of course, the reason is different. For them, the reason is that they have to take environment into factor. But for other countries, something other than environment may become an issue. For Southeast Asian countries, or you can say Asian countries, uninterrupted supply of energy would become an important factor for going for this nuclear energy route. Japan is dependent on this region for 90% of its oil or energy supplies. South Korea is dependent about 97%. Its dependence is 97% on this region. East Asia, or you can say Southeast Asia, all are dependent. Forget about Europe and United States. India is dependent on this region. So all of us are dependent on this region. And so we all have to think about diversification of energy resources. India has also got a major plan to diversify, or you can say develop its nuclear energy program further. Japan has also got very ambitious program. It wants to increase the input, or you can say the component of nuclear energy to 40% and more than that. France has already got 70% of its electricity generation from nuclear energy. So many more countries may go for that. And if you can recollect Obama's campaign, he harped on that. Although initially, before the election, his election campaigns, he was not a nuclear energy enthusiast. He had got a very skeptical opinion or view about nuclear energy. But when he did cost-benefit analysis of nuclear energy and the problems in West Asia, or you can say the Middle East, or you can say whatever, Near West, in whatever way we want to describe it, then he also changed his outlook. If you go through all his speeches, you'll find that later he also started talking about the increase in reactors. And quite interestingly, in United States, for years there was no establishment or setting of nuclear reactor because of the 3 Mile Island. The environmental group very strongly resisted any attempt of nuclear energy production or increase in the establishment of reactors in the United States. They have also withdrawn their opposition to nuclear energy production or setting up new nuclear reactors in the United States. So we may see a new kind of nuclear renaissance, not only in the countries which have already got quite advanced nuclear energy development programs, but also in newer countries. And here I would like to quote Southeast Asian example and even West Asian example. United Kingdom also had problem with nuclear energy for years. Now its strategic policy has given due weightage to nuclear energy development program. United Kingdom is also going to develop nuclear energy in a major way. The second is solar energy. All are also collaborating about solar, wind power and hydropower. So all these sectors are going to get major resources. As you know, this world, whether we like it or not, whether we believe it or not, but this is US-centric world. The moment US starts leading the world in different sectors, all would like to follow the suit. So soon you will find that many countries collaborating in renewable energy resources. And the United States has already taken the lead, and it is having MOUs signed with several countries. So this another feature or factor we may witness in the coming years, because all are now skeptical. Today, suppose for a few months nothing happens, but as I told you, future is quite uncertain about the region. People have tested blood. They know that without any clear-cut ideology, without any organization, without having a leader, they can effect some changes, if not the changes which we would like to see. Then tomorrow they may organize themselves. And if military and other forces are also behind the current, or you can say ruling people, then there could be clashes. And these clashes may provide instability in the region. So in this situation, there will be, I mean, the conventional wisdom suggests that one should go for alternative sources of energy. It is not a solution for the immediate future or for the near future, but for the long term, the country will have to think about that. Now I come to another point. What may happen for the implications for the world, or you can say, what will be its geopolitical implications? Once we are talking about, all the countries are talking about China and India, that they are the major consumers of energy. So they should be taken into consideration when any solution is discussed. And this idea is coming not only from India or China, but this idea is coming from even Western world. You can say cannot have any solution if you do not involve these countries. But there is another angle also. If the problem persists in the region, these two countries, or emerging economies for that matter, are quite heavily dependent on oil as of today for their economic development. So they may suffer some setback in the near future if this problem persists. So for the benefit of the newly emerging economies or newly emerging powers, there should be some stability in the region. And what we should advise, or what we should recommend a non-violent, incremental democratic transition. Election is of course the best method. But about elections, there are views. In the very beginning of my lecture, I told that many writings are indicating that Hitler also came through elections. All these leaders against whom the protests are taking place also got elected through elections, or all are democratically elected leaders. And how they turn dictators. So election is not a solution. But in my opinion, election is the only solution. Violent change is not a solution. And we must, in different international fora, argue for or campaign for a peaceful, or you can say peaceful electoral change of the regimes in these countries. People must be given the right to choose their leaders. The process of election should be free and fair. And different institutions may be used for these purposes. United Nations may send its observers, may send its missions to ensure that peaceful elections take place. Of course, it is for the people of these countries to form their organizations, to mobilize people behind one or another organization. This is not for India to do anything or for the world to do anything. This is for the people of those countries to decide or to do. We can just campaign, or we can just argue, advocate for the benefit of such a system, because violence will have a spiral effects, and it may not bring about changes what these people or the world would like to have. So I think we should go for that also. About what India has been doing, This is a question. And India has recognized it very clearly that price stability must take place. And RBI has already issued several statements how it is going to cope up with the situation. But this is a general international problem. It is not in anyone's hand. One has to just work with other countries of the world to stabilize the situation, to stabilize oil price in the world. And at, at the same time, we would also like to wish the people of the region all the best, and they should have democratic government, but through a peaceful and democratic and in a dialogical fashion. This is what I would like to have, because the moment it is energy supply is disrupted, international this recession, or you can say the financial crisis, would get further aggravated. So this is not good for any country, neither for the recipient countries, not for the oil supplier countries, for the long term or for the near term. So keeping the global economy in mind, the people of this region must work to find a solution. Thank you.
Okay, well, you elaborated the problem in detail, and but the one thing which come to my mind after this, because the major source of income is the oil. So, will the democratic government, the democratic person who will come to the power, they will be in more control of this. So, will they come under pressure for the stabilization of the price, or they will dictate their own term?
Very good question. And this is being discussed world over. Because there is a feeling, not only in this people of this region, but also elsewhere, that United States, especially through monarchies and through this authoritarian governments, although Libyan Gaddafi hardly listens to United States, but other countries in the region generally listen to United States, and they don't, this is the feeling, they don't extract the price which they deserve. This is what is being perceived in the region. But this is one perception of one section, whether it is in United States academia, or some people in the countries where this turmoil is taking place. There is another angle to it also. Suppose these governments turn radical and become populist and raise the price, what would happen? As I told you, because of turmoil, if you can think of raising alternative sources of energy, diversification, and diversification not in the sense of raising other sources of energy, but also looking towards other countries also. Russia, they may go for Canada and Mexico. And even there is pressure on United States that how long can you keep your strategic energy reserve or oil reserve? You should release it to stabilize the world. So this is one big question. So they may turn away from that, and other sources of energy may be emphasized. And ultimately, people of the region would suffer. So, and for Egypt, I don't think this is a major issue, even if, because they don't produce. This is just a transitional point. So for Egypt, it is not an issue. But for other countries, yes, it is one issue which is being discussed. But counterpoints are also being made. So democracy, once democracy functions well, they will see the pros and cons of what may happen. So I don't think that they may momentarily increase, but finally the market would intervene. And the moment market intervenes, they will have to think about the market, and they will have to think about the rationalizing the price. So ultimately they may rationalize the price.
Okay. The next question is, what will be the line of action of the US? Because so far as some observer has pointed out, they use this country as a oil stations. So after the change of guard, they will there will a feeling like nationalism, patriotism, taking countrymen together. In that case, they will reverse their policy, world countries. So in that case, what the role of America and what will the line of action of America?
No, United States has got many contradictions in its, I will not say government, but in its democratic setup. There are elements which would like to have democratically elected governments established in the Middle East. There is a section, especially in industry.
That is the wish. But if we come to the practical level, we will find that the establishment of an institution will take time. So with whom they will negotiate?
This is one major dilemma, as I told during my lecture. This is one major dilemma for United States. And I was describing, in response to your previous question, that its industry would like to have cheap price. It would like to cheap oil. So it would put another kind of pressure. It would like to have a regime which may provide cheap oil for its economic development. So this is another dilemma for that. Third is that, again, among security establishment, they would like to have a regime which may work with it to counter anti-US forces. This anti-US forces may include Islamic terrorists also. It may include some pro-Soviet, pro-Russian elements. It may include some pro-Chinese elements also, because they are also active in this region, especially in northern Africa. So these three major forces would be clashing and would try to influence the ultimate or the final policy of United States. And fourth element, which is extraterritorial, you can say, that is Israel. So far, United States and Israel were successful in dealing with Hosni Mubarak, Egypt, and many other Islamic countries, which have got several radical elements inside. But they don't know. Once democratically elected governments take place, they may define democracy in a different way. They would not like to have the model of Westminster or the model what United States is proposing. They may say, look, this is our system, like Iran is saying. Iran doesn't deny that it is not a democracy. What Iran says that, yeah, it is a civilizational democracy and its nature could be different from the Western model. So it is not necessary that we should follow the Western model. So this danger is very much there. So that's why United States is quite wary. So you may find that United States was not coming out very openly, very clearly during that political turmoil or during protests. It had got very guarded, very what we generally use the term cautious optimism.
No, but they opted this in the middle of the revolution, not in the beginning. In the beginning, the Secretary of State statement was quite hostile to the people.
Exactly.
They were supported.
So Israel.
Yeah.
If you talk to people who are working with the Israeli government or section of society of Israel, they have got very different perspective about the entire turmoil. They say that Israel is quite wary of changes taking place in the region, because as you have very rightly pointed out, they will be democratically elected government, but they may not follow what United States says. Saudi Arabia, it is a monarchy, but by and large it has been supporting what United States wants. Even it came out to stabilize oil prices during the turmoil. In the very beginning, it made a statement that yeah, we are going to intervene it clearly because it it sees itself as a capital of world oil. So this factor is there. Even and it was generally believed that all these dictators or oil-rich sheikhs are allies of United States. Democracy is not existing, but they are allies of the most active, the most powerful democracy of the world. And United States was time and again criticized for supporting these authoritarian regimes, these monarchies in in this region. So if there is a change, and then even these democratically elected leaders which may share the ideology of democracy with United States and with Israel may not like to support programs and policies of United States and Israel. So these are the dilemmas which are really affecting United States and Israel's decision towards democratic movement in the region. That is there.
How do you rate the Indian government approach to dealing with this whole issue?
Yes, in the Indian strategic community, in the policy making community, there were different voices. Some wanted India to play a proactive role and to come out in support of the people who were protesting on the streets of Cairo or elsewhere. But government had a very, as I told, very like United States, it also proceeded very cautiously and quite rightly so. I support the government to stand here. Why? Because it is a people's movement. The people of that country should decide what kind of government would it would they what kind of government would they like to establish. Suppose India supports any side, whether to stabilize the regime or to support the movement. As we are discussing and we have come to the conclusion that regime change is not taking place. Some changes are taking place, and that regime may turn hostile towards India. First thing, they will start targeting India, and this was one major problem which we foresaw at that time. Second, Pakistan may exploit the situation. Pakistan may hobnob with that government and they say, look, India is trying to destabilize you. Do you know the ideology of these people? No. Are they democratic? They will say no. So because they all have got definitions of democracy. So this is the problem. The people who are protesting have got own definitions, and different people have got different definitions. Even Islamic Muslim Brotherhood has got its own definition of democracy. Supporters of Muslim Brotherhood, they say that basically they are the only democratic people. They are basically the real custodians of democratic aspirations of the people of that region. So in this, India could have been caught in a very tight situation. So it should not have meddled into the affairs of the Muslim world and just to become a target in the future.
Okay, we can phrase it this way. This was the epitome of the problem in the Muslim world and the Arab world. But for the world, it's the beginning of the problem because it was not anticipated.
Exactly.
And second thing, grouping and regrouping of nation will start now. So then the central focus of the grouping or regrouping will be the democratic form of the government or the stabilizing of oil prices or else. What will be the focus of it?
Look, openly no one will say that we are intervening to stabilize prices, but definitely it will be one of the major or principal objectives of the country intervening. All would like to say that we want a stable, prosperous, peaceful region, democratically, which has got, some may say even the word people will be scared or countries would be scared to use word democracy. Because there are countries which are not democratic, but they are your friends and they are your allies. So when I saw debate about using word democracy, and interestingly, Pakistan, which at least officially now can claim of having a democratically elected government, it said you should not introduce democracy or the phrase democracy in analyzing the situation. Different fora, you will find Pakistanis protesting. They are, because they know today they have democracy, tomorrow they may not have. So the moment you introduce the phrase democracy in discourse or in and in determining about the quality of the government, then they may also get into trouble. So they know that tomorrow and it is well known also that Pakistan may not have or they may overthrow democracy tomorrow. So even the use of phrase democracy is resented. So this is the situation. So all would like to have prosperous, stable, a stable regime in the region in place. This is what all would like to just convey. So this is the government's position. But people would like to have democratically elected governments in place, like some people in India, in United States. So there are forces. So this is the situation.
So, the lobbyists or the pressure group which is working in those region, will they like to yield to the pressure of the world, or they will again regroup themselves and force out the democracy which is in the say nascent stage?
No, this is clear cut. That during my lecture I made it very clear. They have tested blood.
Okay.
They realize that they have got potential, they have got power to bring about changes. Even it is not complete.
But if we read it between the lines, we find the change for themselves.
Obviously.
Change not for the country. This is the difference between the change in elsewhere and in our world.
This is the problem of the current phase of turmoil. It is basically anger. People are expressing anger.
They are reeling under pain. They are reeling under poverty. That's why they want
exactly.
change.
They don't know they don't know the future. Like at least when Bolshevik revolution took place, they had a clear-cut ideology. They had a clear-cut organization, but at this stage, there is nothing, no ideology, no future plan. They are against sets of rulers, individual rulers, not against particular ideologies.